Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Apple TV's Pluribus, entitled Please Carol. So, this show continues to be one of the most bizarre, fascinating, and ambitious series that I've seen in quite a while. But once again, Episode 4 gives us a bit more vibes than answers or forward progress. It opens strong, ends with tension, and in between is like this cocktail of dark comedy, emotional gut punches, and like pure WTF energy. But at the same time, I'm really yearning for some sense of direction for this show. But let's get into talk about what happened this week. We start with a about 10-minute or so cold opening featuring the guy from Paraguay, the Spanish speaker that Carol got into it with over the phone last week. We basically see what this guy's life has been like leading up to Carol's phone call. He's treating all of this like a legit alien invasion. He's holed up inside of the storage facility that he runs, and he's starving because he refuses to eat any food brought to him by the others, and they're bringing him some pretty nice stuff. I mean, we saw the silver lid, the silver rounded lid that they brought to Carol's house. They bring the same thing to this guy. He refused to eat it, but he's like licking can lids out of the garbage before he finally decides that he's going to open up some of the customers, or all of the customers' storage units in an attempt to find some food. And once he does that, he hits the jackpot. He finds some sugar packets and dog food. And it's while he's contemplating just how low he's sunk while he's like shoveling this dog food into his mouth. It's at that moment that Carol calls, and they have the interaction that we saw last week. And after they hang up, he writes down Carol Esterka, ? And I paused it on that moment for two reasons. One, I just wanted to make sure that I saw what he wrote down. And then two, because I know enough Spanish, not a lot, but I know enough to know that I probably should have recognized that third word, Turca. And I'm like, he wrote down 3 words, and one of them is not just like, I don't even have a guess. I'm like, what is this? So I'm like, let me look this up. And I look it up, and it means just Turkish, like a Turkish person. So he basically wrote down, is Carol Turkish? And I'm like, what is Google what is Google translating? Like, is that really what it is? Like, why would he think that? Why would he write that? So I go to watch the scene again. And when he picks up the phone, that last time Carol is like, hola, yo soy Carol Sturka. And she said her name, and then I'm like, oh my goodness. He thought when she said Carol Sturka that she said Esterka. And while I have my issues with this show, it has been surprisingly funny, with this episode being the funniest, and I really appreciated that kind of like that realization on my part. Like I thought that was a funny kind of like, oh wow. And I like the fact that I got there through having to research. Like, I probably wouldn't have, like, if you just watch the show, you probably miss what happens there. But like my desire to have a full and clear understanding of what's going on led me down that path to kind of get me to what I feel like right now was just a joke by the writers. But like I said, I appreciate that, but actually humor is probably what I want the least out of this show right now. I'd much rather, like I said, it start feeling as if it had some sort of a forward progress. But we're going to have some forward progress here on this video. Moving on. We're now 7 days into the infection, and Carol is leaving the hospital that Zosia is at post-grenade situation. And she finds an abandoned cop car, and she drives home to discover her place swarming with people who are doing cleanup at her house, inside and outside, after the grenade incident. And one of the people outside is like the city's mayor, of course. Another person is played by Somebody Somewhere's Jeff Hiller. Let me just say, like, Somebody Somewhere, it doesn't really work for me. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm glad it's got such a passionate fan base, and that a show that's like that was able to find an audience. And I think that Jeff Hiller and his character is one of the several standouts on that show. And I'm glad that he was able to not just continue to get work, but to land a role on Apple TV's new Vince Gilligan show. I mean, that's really cool. That's a big deal. So I'm happy for him. And I was happy to see him on this show. Anyway, the body that Jeff Hiller's character occupies went by the name of Larry prior to the joining. So that's what he's called throughout this episode. And like I said a moment ago, all these people were here to clean up the mess after the grenade situation. And on one hand, that's thoughtful, right? On the other, much bigger and more important hand, why do you think it was cool to just go up at Carol's house like that? She's understandably frustrated, much less so than I would be. But she goes inside and she's got the whiteboards. She got whiteboards on deck like sticky notes. Like rather than just like cleaning a whiteboard off, she's like, let me just move this one to the side and start on a fresh one. And the whole point of a whiteboard is the convenience of cleaning it off and starting over. And she's like, no, let me just be wasteful and use another one. But she starts another a clean whiteboard and it says, what I know about them. And she writes 5 things. 1. Eager to please would give me an A-bomb, ? Number 2, can't kill, not a fly. 3, don't play faves, like all jerks same. 4, trying to change me, and then she put stars on each side of that sentence. And then number 5, weirdly honest, like with a question mark at the end. After Carol's finished with her list, she calls in Larry to test out that last weirdly honest one. And she asks what he or they or them, whatever you want to call them, think of her books. He says that they love everything about her books, a little bit too enthusiastically. Like she asks for specifics, and Larry's like, we like everything about your books. They're perfect. No notes, better than Shakespeare. And it all sounds like BS until he perfectly quotes a line from the beginning of the first novel. And at first I was like, okay, they have a hive mind. Are they like communicating? And he's like, yo, read the first few pages of that book so I can say something like I read it. And I thought that Carol doesn't press it. And then also, if the entire world, aside from this handful of people, is part of this hive mind and her books are bestsellers, it stands to reason that more than a couple of these hive minds have I definitely have access to specific lines and opinions on these books that they will be able to provide Larry to speak out loud. But still, I thought it was weird that he quoted a line from the beginning of the first novel. Like if I was trying to sell her on the idea that I read the books, I'd quote a line from like the middle of the fourth one. But anyway, Larry goes on to say that they experience her work like not through one set of eyes because they are collective, but through all eyes, through every reader who ever felt something from her stories. And he gives a specific anecdote about one reader named Maura who was contemplating suicide but found peace in Carol's books. And he says that that's kind of like how they see her work, not through Maura's eyes specifically, but through the eyes of people who are emotionally impacted by her books. It's more on an emotional level than on a like, yeah, we've sat down and read every line kind of deal. We can feel all of the feelings that you have given people with your books. And then Carol asks what Helen thought, and Larry tries to dodge it. And then this is when they collectively finally decide like they want to honor the Helen being off limits piece. Like you said, we can't talk about Helen. Now all of a sudden they want to remember that directive, but Carol's not going to let it go. Larry finally says that Helen thought her books were, quote, harmless, and that the words cotton candy, were what Helen thought when she thought about her books. And then Carol presses Larry about the unpublished novel. If you remember in episode 1, Helen presses Carol to put out a book that she's more passionate about that's not within the Waikaro, that's what it's called, right? Timeline. And after an excruciatingly long pause, I think 2 excruciating long pauses, Larry admits that Helen thought her books were fine. Fine as in meh. And he says she stopped on page 137. And Carol's like, it's only got 489 pages. Like, she was damn near halfway and she stopped. Like, and Carol, she understandably wants to know with the answer to the same question that I had when I learned that. Why did Helen encourage her to publish that book if she didn't believe in it? And the answer is that she thought it wouldn't hurt Carol's career and that it would make Carol happy. And on the surface, that sounds sweet, but it's devastating because like that's not support, that's pity. Like let her put out that trash that she's so passionate about because it won't hurt her career and it'll make her happy. Like it's gotta hurt so bad to find out like, posthumously that your partner did not respect your work, and not just like respect your work like your 9 to 5 that you do every day, like something that you're passionate about and something that you've made a lot of money on and something that you consider yourself to be very good at. Your partner thought it was mediocre. Like that's gotta sting, especially when you can't say something. You can't go, hey, why haven't you told me my book sucked because she's dead? That's just really, really rough for Carol. So then she changes up her whiteboard. She removes the question mark after weirdly honest and replaces it with a period and adds the sentence can't lie. So Carol again goes to visit Zsa in the hospital, who's still recovering. She can't stand. She can't even open like one of the little box milks that you get in the lunchroom as a child. She can't even open that. And Carol apologizes for the grenade mishap and starts asking questions. And she wants to know if the joining is reversible. And Zsa says that she can't answer that. And this confirms two things for Carol. One, that it is reversible, because if it wasn't, Zsa would have just said, no, you can't fix it. And two, that they can't lie, because if they could, and Zsa didn't want to reveal that it's reversible, she could just lie and say, no, it's not reversible. But the fact that she said, I can't say anything, I can't tell you that, confirms for Carol that it is reversible. And it gives her an idea, but I want to take a brief pause before we talk about Carol's plan, because I want to talk about this brief little bit of backstory that we get here about Carol's adolescence. We know Carol's a very bitter person, a very cynical person, but that's really about it. We don't really know why she's that way or why she has remained that way despite everyone else having succumbed to the joining. Like, why didn't that impact her? And this little story, very brief, about this Camp Freedom Falls, it gives us some insight into just who Carol is and why. And we learned that she was sent to Camp Freedom Falls. It was a conversion camp that her mother sent her to. And she said that these people there they treated her terribly, but they smiled in her face while doing it, just like Zsa and all of the others. And Carol's calling out this like culty, brainwashed energy in Zsa's smile and demeanor. It's a very pointed scene. Like, she's seeing a pattern here. The desire to fit her into this box of what they consider what someone else considers to be normal, and that's personal for her to feel like you're trying to make me into someone that I'm not, just like my mother did when she found out that I wasn't straight. And that's a level of depth that I'm feeling that about this show. Give me a little bit more of that. Give me the forward progress I'm looking for. I'll be a happy camper. But again, I do understand. I feel like Vince is setting up this world and he's just taking longer to do it than most, because once that's done, it can be on autopilot and he could tell the story that he really wants to tell, whether that be a plot driven story or whether that be a character relationship driven story. So next stop is the pharmacy in the hospital. Carol grabs some syringes and pentothal, which she sneaks out under the guise of it being heroin, of all things. I love she says some line too, like whoever this pharmacist is like, oh, well, heroin's kind of bad. Why would we give you that? She's like, you just gave me a grenade and you could have given me an atom bomb you'd give me one if I wanted to, but now you're going to like begrudge me on heroin? Like, chill out. And she says something like, you begrudge me on some H? But we see her doing research on the pentothal, and I noted that it was an anesthetic, but I was still unclear as to what she planned on doing with it. And it's at this point that I realized I was in the middle of another classic like Vince Gilligan. You're not going to have any idea what you're watching until I decide that you are now allowed to know. One of those scenes. And Carol gets home. She dumps out the heroin. She sets up a camera and she injects the pentothal and then just falls asleep. And it cuts to her like just being asleep. And I was so confused. I'm like, what did she even plan on doing? Because I thought she fell asleep on her plan. But then Carol starts to play back the video and it all begins to make sense. For starters, this scene was an emotional roller coaster. Like, we see Carol finally break down over the loss of Helen, which she had yet to do through these first 3 episodes. And that's very, that's sad. That's moving. And we also see her accurately remark on how hot Zsa is. So it's all over the place. But after we see this very funny scene of her watching what she was doing on this camera, she tosses the memory card and says, we have a winner. And this essentially is informing the audience that the pentothal was about to be used as a truth serum on Zsa, since we know they can't lie. And that's what all of this was her essentially testing out the pentothal to see if it would be a successful truth serum to use on Zsa. So next thing you know, she heads to the hospital. Zsa wakes up. Carol's already there. I actually assumed that Carol had already put the pentothal in the IV before Zsa even woke up, but nope. In the elevator, Carol puts the pentothal in the IV then, and as Zsa starts to fade, Carol wastes no time. How do you reverse the joining? And I love that they did not BS their way to this point. Once it became clear that Carol's plan was to give the truth serum to Zoja and ask that question, they shot us straight there. Like, they didn't drag that out. Once they revealed it, they were like, we're not going to make you sit with this knowing what's happening, knowing what's going to happen. We're just going to get straight to it. And I loved that. But like I said, she starts to fade. Carol asks, how do you reverse the joining? And as we see Zoja struggling with answering the question, or with not answering the question, we see the others start to close in from all over. Like, they're approaching from the street, from the parking lot, coming out of the hospital, all in an attempt to stop Zoja from revealing how to reverse the joining. Carol handcuffs herself to Zoja, determined to not let them pull her away. And then everyone begins chanting the episode title over and over, increasingly louder. It's very eerie, almost as if they want to create enough noise and chaos to mask anything that Zoja might let slip out. And then Zoja passes out. They say she's in cardiac arrest. They try to revive her. Carol's terrified, and that's where we end the episode. So, where do we stand after 4 episodes? 4 out of 9. Well, I really enjoyed the experience of watching this episode. The cold open with the Spanish-speaking survivor was very compelling. Carol's truth serum experiment with the camera was simultaneously hilarious and moving. The show has a great mood. It's a creative concept, strong performances everywhere. There's a lot of interesting theories and discussions regarding what exactly the show is trying to say. But like I've said before, like, how long can this show keep going or keep asking, like, what's going on here before it starts to, like, look and move forward? It kind of feels like we're still stuck in place setting the table. But like I said, after 4 episodes, man, I'm ready to eat, man. Like, okay, I get what's going on here. Can I feel like we're going somewhere? Like, this show is intended to run 4 seasons, apparently, and I'm not even seeing enough meat on the bones here for 1. Now, I know there's got to be something. Like, I'm not worried. I'm confident that Vince Gilligan's got something up his sleeve that I'm absolutely going to love. Like, somehow this show is going to open up and expand, and the bigger picture will be a little bit more clear. But like I said, we're basically halfway through a 9-episode season, and it still feels like we're circling the same questions. Like, I don't need the answers to said questions, but I would at least like to feel as if I can see a path, even if I can't see the destination. And I don't really like that after 4 episodes, I don't know where this is going. Well, it's less so that I don't know where it's going, because I don't need to know where it's going. It's that I don't feel like it's going anywhere. It's just now a 4th consecutive episode of getting a clearer picture of the world. And to be clear, I think that's important and necessary. I'm just now starting to wonder when we're going to stop world building and start plot forming. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Like the channel, subscribe, share to your social media, join the Discord, join the conversation. And until next week, actually, no, until later this week. It was just announced. Is there anyone still watching right now? But if there is, it was just announced that episode 5 is dropping on Wednesday. So if you are still watching now, I'm probably going to get this video out, not on Wednesday, but maybe on Wednesday. If it drops Tuesday night, I might watch it Tuesday night, get the video out on Wednesday. We'll see. But so, like I said, join the Discord, join the conversation. And until later this week, peace.